PPP sleeps at the wheels while our refugee situation gets out of control. Having agreed publicly to support the government as it relates to the protection of our territorial integrity and sovereignty, it was anticipated that the government and opposition will work in a united fashion to deal with the Venezuela threat. We believe that there are several critical issues to be addressed. We remain alarmed over the continued influx into Guyana of refugees from Venezuela and the PPP government inept and treacherous response to the situation. The number of Venezuelan refugees in Guyana is estimated around 35,000, and that number is growing as we speak. In several critical ways, this situation has long reached crisis proportions for the nation. First, a threat to national security and territorial integrity. Most of these refugees now reside in our sparsely populated hinterland region. Should they become a majority in any sizable area of our territory, Guyana could face the threat of possible annexation of these areas by Venezuela, similar to the fate of Crimea, which was seized by Russia in March 2014 on the grounds that the majority of the population there is made up of ethnic Russians and Russian speakers. The influx and uncontrolled integration of refugees can also facilitate the placement of fifth columnists and operatives into key government, military, and leadership positions, both at the local and national levels, and thus achieve a soft invasion of the country with far-reaching implications to our security, independence, and nationhood. Threat to Guyanese nationality and electoral integrity. We have repeatedly expressed our deep concern over the possibility and reality of the PPP seeking to register refugees as electors. That threat also confronts our country today. In this regard, let us recap a few critical developments. In August 2021, the PPPC administration passed the Registration of Births and Deaths Amendment Bill, which became Act Number 9 of 2021. Particularly, this act introduced into our laws a deceptively harmless provision which the PPP government said was intended to simplify the requirements for obtaining a Guyana birth certificate. Section 44A, one of the new sections inserted into the law, outlines the process by which an adult who has no documentation whatsoever may acquire a Guyana birth certificate on that basis alone. 1. A declaration in a prescribed form signed by a person of high standing in the community, including a community leader or tushao. Or 2. A declaration under the Statutory Interpretation Act by a person of high standing in the community, including a community leader or tushao. This declaration is to be signed by a justice of the peace or a commissioner of oaths, and the declaration must state the particulars of the birth of the person. Effectively, the law provides a means for any person to be registered as a born Guyanese without the need to provide proper evidence that they were indeed born in Guyana. Furthermore, any person once armed with a Guyana birth certificate and over 14 years of age now becomes entitled to be listed in the National Register of Registrants from which the voters list is extracted. Compare this slackness to the much tighter requirements in other countries. In Trinidad and Tobago, for example, a person seeking a birth certificate is required to provide documentary proof, such as a letter from the hospital where they were born, an immunization card, names of siblings, or a record from the school they attended, all documents that a genuine applicant already has or can readily obtain. We raised the alarm then that the PPP intended to effect thousands of birth registrations, particularly in those far-flung hinterland regions, using an established network of PPPC-aligned justices of the peace, tushaos, and notaries public. The danger is compounded by the fact that the Guyana Election Commission now conducts office-based registration without verification of residence, as the PPP has also removed the residency requirement from the Registration Act. Guyanese must be aware that the registration of births and deaths is a critical component of our election integrity and national security. The adding of persons to a register who are not legitimately entitled undermines the integrity of the population and can lead to the anomalies in the allocation of resources and voting and representation. Note that we draw a distinction between the registration of refugees for administrative purposes, which is necessary, and the registration for citizens, which we oppose. Our core principles on the rights of refugees. The opposition wishes to reiterate that despite these deep concerns, we remain committed to the comfortable settlement of these economic refugees in our homeland, as a demonstration of our typical Guyanese hospitality and our full compliance with our international humanitarian obligations to refugees. The UN Convention of Refugees, under which Guyana is obligated to accept refugees, spells out clearly that they are entitled to such rights as employment, education, healthcare, internal travel and housing, international law. However, makes a clear distinction between migrants and refugees. In particular, there's no obligation for states to grant political rights to refugees. Each nation has to assess its own particular circumstances. Our circumstances are exacerbated by the incompetence and ploys of the PPPC administration, as well as by the fact that our country's borders are extremely porous, our system of immigration and border control is lax, and government lacks the ability and interest to determine who is crossing our borders out of real economic necessity. The time has long passed for a national conversation on refugees, on their treatment and their path to Guyanese citizenship. Unless decisive action is taken, Guyanese will find that their country faces serious threats to its security and sovereignty without a gunshot fired in anger or in any military action. In the 2 years remaining in its tenure, the PPP needs to act before the situation gets worse. Thank you.